Hello, I'm Sandra Ireland. I'm an author and creative facilitator, and since 2021 I've been working with Tayside Healthcare Arts Trust to deliver an online creative writing programme for people living with long-term conditions in the Angus, Tayside and Perth areas. Initially, the group was set up for anyone who was feeling a bit isolated in the wake of the pandemic due to illness or rural location, and it provided an online space for people to come together and socialise while learning something new. Participants tell us that the weekly sessions build back lost confidence, improve mood and well-being, and help them to focus on something other than illness. In the process, the participants have formed a strong bond, have learned each other's stories, and developed writing skills which may have surprised some of them. It's been a pleasure to see their confidence build and to watch them perform their work not only online but in person at places like the V&A.
The mists of time. Back in the mists of time, and in the mists slowly lifting, the first lights of dawn that are born and appear, just as the mists at last do clear. All is quiet in the button ben, when through the house a figure moves, silently to awake the fire that still has embers on this cool and misty morn in September. The figure that enters a room where in one corner there leans a broom, in another corner stands a loom. The figure first uses the broom to sweep the floor before she works on the loom. With her sight now fading due to opaque eyes, and with narrowed knuckles and stiffened fingers, she sits at the loom and plies the shuttle to and fro in the rhythm of the wise, as the morning light streams through the window and lingers. Around the cot there are grazing sheep, who, to earn their keep, supply the wool to be carded and spun on the spindle or spinning wheel, then wound on a reel, ready to be woven on the loom that sits in the corner of the room. The dyes are ready for the woven cloth. One is of saffron yellow, as like gold it surely does glow. It will be 200 years and more before many colours will be woven into cloth to form patterns that will display the wearer's worth. But let us remember a morn in September and the weaver's clouding eyes as she sits at her loom and plies the shuttle to and fro long ago in the rhythm of the wise.
So this is from Fiona, who's another member of our group, and it's called Tartan Pride. As a youngster living in Wales, I never felt I had a claim to a clan nor a tartan. My tartan trews and skirt belied this, as my vanity heralded my love of wearing both. As I grew up, I learned of my mother's Scots connections, and so I proudly learned that right was mine after all. Robertson resides in her family tree, and so moving to the Pitlochry area, I realised I was coming home. Cattle rustling, marauding Robertsons wandered in their tartan across the moors between Rannoch and Blair Athol. So my tartan of choice is the predominantly green and earthy colours of the hunting Robertson. This would have aided and abetted the clandestine cattle raiding they seem to have been so accustomed to. My first experience of wearing a proper kilt, I remember the weight of it and wondered how anyone could move, let alone run, wearing such a kilt with yards of material gathered around waists with sword at side. It was not, however, my first foray into tartan wearing. Who could forget my 4-year-old bright red trews in family pictures beaming proudly at the camera, or my 12-year-old Bay City Rollers phase when I took a pair of pinking shears to my mother's apron one Thursday afternoon to fashion a tartan scarf to wave sitting in front of Top of the Pops on TV that night. My mother's displeasure was worth it.
Nora was late.
The audition took longer than expected. Then Terry wanted to talk about his nagging wife while leering over her in the passenger seat of his MG like a predatory giant. A lift home was one thing, but the man was a monster. She had promised him a drink next week. I mean, why alienate the director at this stage? But she had no intentions of going. A quick glance at the grandmother clock in the hall told her there was just enough time. They could catch the bus if they were smart about it. She was still wearing her harem pants and roll-neck sweater, but she wouldn't bother changing, no matter what her sister said. Mavis sat in the living room in her tartan travelling suit, her hat, gloves and handbag in a neat pile on her lap, ready for duty. "You're late, I know, but I'm ready to go." Nora lifted the small leather valise she had packed earlier, as though it were Exhibit A. "Are you not going to ask if I got the part?" "I am not." Mavis put on her hat and shoved a hat pin in so hard Nora felt sure she must have hit bone. "You clearly got a part, or you wouldn't have asked that question. And it seems you're still wearing the costume." Mavis marched past her into the hall, opened the front door, then thrust her arm out, halting Nora like a horse before a Grand National jump. "Hat!" It was a statement, not a question. "Mavis, it's 1960. No one's wearing them these days." She looked at her sister's bonnet, which suggested little Bo Peep had joined the Salvation Army, and added, "No one like me." "Standards, Nora, standards." Nora whipped a paisley patterned scarf out of her pocket and tied it round her head. It was a little old-fashioned, but she fastened it at the back rather than the front in what she liked to call her Grace Kelly look. "There!" Her sister rather grudgingly nodded approval and ushered her out, locking the door of Ivy Cottage behind them and pocketing the key in her waistcoat. It was going to be one of those weekends, Nora thought, as she followed her sister down the garden path. She might be the older of the two, but Mavis was in charge. Since retiring from the police, Mavis had signed them up for all sorts of activities, including these Scottish Historical Society outings, this time to Hanbury House. "We need to keep ourselves active, brain and body," Mavis had insisted. There was a threat of rain in the air as they arrived at the village hall. Major Nigel Hunter took a roll call, although there was only 6 of them, and Nora was disappointed to find there was no single men in the company. In addition to the Major and his wife, there was only Lloyd Giddings, and the latest in a string of ingenues which seemed enamoured of the ageing director. He never introduced any of the women he draped on his arms and treated them deplorably, calling them love or darling, as though it were a term of endearment instead of forgetfulness, if he had ever asked their names. What was it with middle-class men of a certain age?
The paisley shawl had been given to my great-great-grandmother on her wedding day by her mother, who had made it. Many hours of hard work on the loom had gone into it. The shawl was then passed down to the eldest daughter on her wedding day, along with the history of how the workers went on strike for better everything at great hardship. As many were particularly militant, it fitted the something old at most ceremonies. A cherished item, but used, not left hidden in its wrapping, and it did its job in keeping the wearer warm. By the time it passed to my mother, the colours were faded and but the pattern was still clear. She used it more as a lap cover when she was cold, so it lived on the arm of her chair. As a child, it was a useful item in my games of pretend. It is in my possession now, more faded and worn in patches, but still has its place and use in my living room. Having only had sons, I'm hoping for a granddaughter one day, and the shawl will be waiting for her.
Billiken Birch. Lucy had walked across the pilgrim path in the glens for a while now, with a view to meet her loved one, who had come from a distance to meet her too. She was so glad to be seeing Jonathan again. His clear blue eyes and rugged complexion made her heart beat fast. He was so handsome. She waved as she saw this figure in the distance, in the horizon coming towards her, and she started to run fast towards him too. Her boots pounding the turf of the ground below her feet, her long brown shiny hair blowing in the wind, and her breath panting as it steamily evaporated in the cold air as she ran. The sun high in the sky shining down from the blue and white wispy skies above the beautiful landscape below, highlighting the crevices of the hills and streams flowing down between them, with the scattered sheep grazing freely, roaming through the rough grass landscape, leaping occasionally to each other. And eagles soared high, towering over the crevices of the peaks of the hills in the distance, looking for his catch of the day, of any movement in the undergrowth below. It was a good day to meet up at last. Jonathan had something special to give Lucy. He had not seen her for months, and had so longed for when they could be together this day with her. He was also needing to grieve and let go of the sadness and sorrow too that the loss of his mum had caused him. He had been holding back the tears, not knowing how to let his emotions go. Always reminded as a child of needing to be brave. He felt broken-hearted, and to be with Lucy, the love of his life again, gave him strength and hope of the joy to come. He had in his pocket a felt package to give Lucy that held the Block and Booth brooch he had been given from his late mother. It was made with silver, with a beautiful heart shape carved out of the middle. It had 2 strands, one from each side, that came together with a knot in the middle, a symbol of his mother's love given to him for his bride-to-be, and of his love too on their upcoming wedding. He had been caring for his mum latterly as she became less mobile with arthritis, and then with a diagnosis of ovarian cancer too. He knew that it was too far spread, that she did not have much time to live, and so he moved back home so she could stay comfortably in her own home for the last few weeks of her life. This had been hard for both Lucy and Jonathan, who consequently were separated for a while, in that they could not physically meet and spend time together in their preparations for their wedding. Lucy, having lost her own mum several years earlier, had understood how he was feeling in his caring role, and the frustration and stress that he took on board from his mum as she bravely carried on, knowing she would not be able to fulfill all the passions and dreams she had in her short time ahead. Lucy had been there for him in the many texts and phone calls to help him cope in what way she could for him. No longer had she been able to visit when his mum's health deteriorated. As Lucy ran, there was a sudden squawk from the bushes and a flutter of feathers from a pair of game birds that had been disturbed. The male partridge, adorned with beautiful reddy brown feathers with distinct markings, and the female in a toned-down brown colour. As they fluttered to a safe haven behind the stream, and then standing proud in the valley, strutting through the long wiry grass to survey their new landing place, and looking for food there amongst the seeds of the wild barley and grasses there. Lucy and Jonathan made their way to a small bothy to have some shelter from the wind, to be able to discuss their plans and spend time together. They gathered some bracken branches and loose wood and kindling, so to make a fire to keep warm. The bothy had stone walls and a corrugated tin roof with a solid door to keep the warm in, and a long shelf-like bench against the wall where you could sit. They had brought some water with them for a hot drink, and soon they were there, the fire lit and the water heated in an old pan on the fire. It was one of their special places to relax away from the world. There was time to be together, to talk again, to listen and embrace, and to be comforted. They lit a couple of candles and they hugged as they sat close and watched the flickering flames dancing in the half light. It would soon be dark and they would stay where they were for tonight and leave first thing in the morning. They stocked up on more wood for the fire from a wood nearby to last through the night. It was a frosty night and the large frosty moon shone overhead. They walked through the trees towards the light ahead. They stopped to look at the frosty moon as it shone through the trees so large and bright tonight. Frosty full moon in starlight sky, growing brightly. All around a halo shining, smiling down with moonlit face, welcoming all with her embrace. Jonathan and Lucy looking up towards the dark starry night sky, watching the large frosty moon arise, sitting close to keep warm amongst the frost-laden leaves, as owl in the distance hooting, whilst trees sparkle in the moonlit breeze. Frosty hands in knitted gloves, hats on heads with eyes focused, faces aglow in the reflected light, hearts of joy and full of delight with the sight they shared this night. The light from the bothy beckoned them in again, and as they moved from the shadows of the wood into the welcoming light of the bothy, as they opened the door and went inside to rekindle the fire, soon it was alight again with flames dancing and eyes hypnotised watching the flames in a cosy room. And Jonathan, at just the right moment, gently took out the little parcel from his pocket he had been carrying, which a felt piece of cloth which covered the brooch, and lovingly gave it to Lucy with a hug and a smile. "This is for you," he said, "for when we are apart, to hold on to with all my love." Lucy was so touched by the gentle and loving gesture and responded with a thank you and a kiss, and together they watched the fire fade down to glowing embers and cosy in each other's arms, were soon both fast asleep. The next day, Jonathan and Lucy were up early, just cold water to freshen up with from a stream nearby, and a small hand towel to dry, but adequate. Then after a hike to the nearest train station, Lucy would again say her goodbyes to Jonathan, knowing it was not long now before the big day. It had been rewarding spending time together and plans made for a few weeks ahead. She wore her Looking Booth brooch, token on the lapel of her jacket, a treasured heart-warming gift from her fiancé for whilst they were apart from each other till their wedding day.
I wrote this one at home after getting some inspiration. It's called Moon Fragments. Lady Moon gently folds her cloak of pale golden light, wrapping the earth in mystery. Silently, slowly, shadows shift, slipping secretly across its surface, and the moon gives them free access. A grey veil descends the sky. Banners of filigree grey stretch out. Behind them, the moon is hiding. Tonight, the velvety darkness speaks of a vastness beyond eternity. Moonlight shines brightly, beckoning me in, a comforting orb, the gateway to elsewhere. It leads the way. Gaze deeply, what is out there.
This is really, really short. It was just a prop that we did actually during the Orkney chair. I was never allowed to sit in the special chair. It wasn't for bairns like me. It was Dad's chair. And only the man of the house could rest against its woven back, warming his weary feet by the fire. Only he could keep his private things in the drawer underneath, It was Dad's chair, the special chair. I always wanted to sit in the chair. After all, I'd helped find the chunky driftwood that became the smooth seat. I'd helped twist its rough straw into the woven hood. But I wasn't allowed to sit in the special chair until now.
So this is called Friday 16th of November. A fox approves of Archie's path, and I miss Martha. I'm under the duvet with a book when the bedroom door opens. Ruby bombs in, jumps onto the bed, eyes wild and round, tail puffed up like a feather duster. She's followed by Archie, equally excited, but less puffed. The most amazing thing just happened, he says. We were looking out the window. Were you admiring your new path? I interrupt. I was standing by the curtains, Archie continues. Ruby was on the table and there was this beautiful full moon. We both look at the cat, who is not allowed on tables. Cat ignores both of us and commences arse cleaning. Anyway, we were looking out the window and I saw this fox walking along Taran and Graham's wall. It got to our garden and then stopped and looked down at the path. Then it jumped off the wall and walked all the way along the path. Fox approved, I say. That's brilliant. Archie nods while I continue. Do you remember that time when, cover your ears, Ruby, when Martha was still with us and I was sleeping in the back room because I was not snoring, Archie says. Because you were snoring like a badger and I was forced to move. Me and Martha were on the futon. Martha was inside the sleeping bag, curled up by my tummy. Taran and Graham's security light woke me up. That's because you're a weirdo and you sleep with the curtains open, Archie says in a voice I can only interpret as smug. It wouldn't have happened if you'd been in the bedroom. I soldier on. If I'd been in the bedroom, I would have missed the fox. It set off the light and was standing on the wall right next to the window. We were that close, the three of us, staring at each other, not sure what to do next. Martha wasn't scared, though, being an outdoor cat. She'd seen a few things. Not like Ruby, eh? Archie's outside the bedroom door now, en route to the bathroom. The cat jumps off the bed, runs to the hall, which will wait until the click-clonk noise of the bathroom light announces bedtime. She's a little furry sentinel, guarding Archie from dangers real and imagined. Mostly imagined. Archie and Ruby return to the bedroom. The lad goes under the covers beside me, and the cat walks across the headboard a few times before settling down just south of my pillow. There's a calm quiet in the room. I think about another night, another cat, another fox, and curl my arm around Ruby's soft, round warmth, whispering, still miss the other one. So there was a moon and a requiem for lost pets. So.
This one was, I think the prompt was to do with the autumn feasts and things.
Yeah.
So this is a Samhain supper. The table is set. Plates and cutlery placed just so. Sparkling glasses awaiting tipples of choice. Candles are lit. A warm glow wraps around the room, and flickering flames dancing in a non-existent breeze. We take our seats, eyes wide at the autumn fare presented to us. Thick pumpkin soup, warm and spicy, its shell now lighting up the kitchen windowsill through lovingly carved scary faces. Homemade bread cut into thick chunks, soft and moist and with a crispy crust. And apple crumble, an autumn favourite. Fruit picked fresh from the garden and mixed with sugar and cinnamon, covered with an oaty crumble and baked in the oven, the sweet aroma hanging heavily in the air. But we can't begin, not yet. First, we take a moment to remember. We laugh, we cry, we give thanks. We gaze at your photos and know that you're here, just for tonight. This one night when the veil is at its thinnest, and you can join us for our sumptuous Samhain supper. And the candles dance with your vigour as we share wine and bread and tales of you, your empty plate full to the brim with love.
Hello from the V&A. Karine has challenged me for a few words to say, so I hope this will come across not too bad and okay. So I'll do my best to pass the test I hope this poem will be as good as the rest. Thank you so much, Sandra and Karine, for all your hard work via Zoom on the screen. But it's so much better to see everyone in real time and all the participants whose hard work today did real shine. I really appreciate the chance to show what we can do, plus the camaraderie and stories we've been through. So for now, I wish everyone a very happy Christmas and a happy New Year, and for Alicia, I give you a tear. I know what it's like to lose a pet, someone so close, because I know it's them who can love us the most. But trust me, you'll get over it, because the things that we love are watching us and loving us from up above. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. See everyone again in January.